it just make click, 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 like the dominoes just falling in my subconscious mind, falling down the funnel into an ever smaller and sharper present moment. And then it was so funny because it was like in a shredder machine or something where thoughts would just get shredded. Overall, that experience was so far not that crazy. What then unfolded was what this whole video is about and what I really wanted to capture and share. And I wanted to talk about this so you know it's real. And what I'm about to share, what happened next, is really just to inspire you so you know that this is possible and that people are not pulling this out of thin air, that there's really substance to it, right? What happened is really something that reignited my fascination with this whole topic of pain processing. Because afterward I had some insights about what this could be and how this relates to my life and how it's not just a one-time experience, but I do believe that this is liberating deeply held, stuck emotions in our body. I believe that it releases subconscious psychological patterns. I believe that it sustainably and deeply changes our subtle and gross behaviors. I believe it will affect the way I smile, the way I nod, the subconscious little non-verbal communications as well as the vocal ones, and how relaxed I am able to stay in my daily life, how present I can be, how alive I can be, how happy I can be. Like afterward, I just fell on my back, laid on this bed, and I was just like, whoa, like suddenly I just felt a relief and a true sense of fulfillment and happiness. Hey, I don't know how well you can see me actually, but something exceptional just happened, and I would love to share it with you here on the corner of my bed, because I just read a little bit of the book of Not Knowing by Peter Ralston, and I skipped to one of the last parts where he talked about emotion, anger, pain, and desire. And it's an exceptionally well written book, and especially these chapters really struck a nerve, if you will say. This man, Peter Ralston, I've heard, got enlightened in his early 20s and ever since refined and deepened that state of being. And now he's in his 60s or 70s, I don't know exactly, maybe even 80s. So he's come a long way. And one of the stories he tells in this chapter is that he literally can see the activity of our subconscious mind creating pain, and that he can, if he wants to, simply stop that activity. So he basically says that pain is not a given fact of reality, but it's created by our mind, and we can stop creating it. And he didn't say that as armchair philosophy, but he actually put it to the test. And when he had a dentist appointment where they would literally drill into the nerve of his tooth, which was a surgery or I don't know exactly what it was, that lasted for over an hour. He put it to the test and said, hey, I don't want any narcotics or anesthesias or anything. And he said he genuinely did not experience pain. He clearly experienced the sensations, but no pain, which is fascinating to say the least. And that is just a quick story to give context on the profundity of this man's words, because I obviously can't put these chapters into a video now. So I encourage you to read the book, but really what I wanted to share was an experience that just unfolded here on the corner of my bed, which is that I was reading this book, and at some point I knew, okay, it's time to hang up the phone. I got the message. And what I got was exactly that nugget of wisdom that I needed to get to spark not only an insight in me, but direct my whole being and make it ripe to drop off the tree, to be ready to be harvested. And that is exactly what I was trying to explain in that side ramble we just went on, that other rabbit hole, which is that I realized, hey, look, you can continue reading, but the true juice is found in pausing and integrating the essential gifts you have just received. What do I mean by that? A lot of times when we read something or listen to something or experience something for the first time, it touches us most deeply. It opens something up that won't be opened up in the same way the second time around or the third time around, usually. And therefore, it's definitely a missed opportunity. Now, when I read this book, it was time to hang up the phone, and I almost didn't listen to my intuition, but I did. What happened next was quite interesting. What the book inspired in me when I read the words was super sharp presence, like razor sharp presence, because the way he talked about anger and desire was how these things can only exist because we believe and hang on to our mental ideas about the future. Fear and desire cannot exist without us thinking about the future. And he explained that and pointed to that in so many nice and fine and sharp and deeply wise ways that it just made click, 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 like the dominoes just falling in my subconscious mind, that in that moment I knew it was time to put down the book and just meditate. And when I meditated, I noticed myself basically falling down the funnel into an ever smaller and sharper present moment. And for the first time, I think it was that I got so present that I would immediately let go thoughts after they arose. So what happened was that, for example, there was a thought and the sentence started forming, but then half the sentence got cut off. So I could see my thought starting and then half the sentence was cut off. And then next time only a quarter of a sentence, then just an eighth of a sentence, then just a word, then just half a word. And then it was so funny because I just saw these words and thoughts arising, but they would just immediately be chopped off halfway through the word. And then it was so funny because it was like in a shredder machine or something where thoughts would just get shredded. And that was funny because then I realized, hey, actually, all our words, our thinking and sentences and stories we form really only exist because we constantly jump to the past and the future. If I don't remember what I just said a second ago and 5 seconds ago, I won't be able to finish the sentence because I constantly have to remember what I just said and then logically think about what to say next. I noticed how all these stories we spin in our heads, the stories, the paragraphs, the sentences, the words, always require jumping back from past to future. And when you just let that go and just stay in the sharp present moment, what you get are just shredded words. And this is the interesting thing, because it's not about the stories or words and whatnot, it's all about the energy. Because how can a thought even come up in our conscious mind? Some sort of energy needs to propel it into our conscious mind. It doesn't come from anything. Like if we had no energy, would be dead. So because we are alive, okay, there's a certain life force energy, even if you just call it hormones, that propel us to live. And literally, if you believe that thoughts are just in our brain, well, what happens in our brains? It's nerves that, like literally electricity that's curving through our neurons, right? So it's energy. So what's really interesting is that these thoughts, what I could feel is how it doesn't really matter what the words are or the stories or the sentences. It's actually the energies that carry these. It's basically like the words and sentences and stories are surfers on a wave of energy. So it's like I could feel how there's a wave of energy coming up, and I could already sense what the next word and sentence was gonna be that pops up into my conscious mind, because I could feel the energy before the word. So then I could feel the energy rising up, and boop, and there was the word or the sentence. And then I could just shred the word off immediately, so the word wasn't there anymore, but I could still feel the energy ebbing out. And the interesting thing is that if I hadn't shredded the word, the wave would not have ebbed out, but would have docked in and then stayed there. And that would have meant I would continue surfing that wave, or it would have meant that I had stuck energy that got stuck in my head especially. Now, all of this sounds kind of profound or super crazy, but overall that experience was so far not that crazy. It was basically just, I read the book, I felt the need to put it down, I meditated, and then I just noticed how I was able to easily let go thoughts. That's basically how you could say it. I just elaborated on it in fine detail, because if someone says just let go your thoughts, it can mean a lot of things and can work well or not so well. And in this case, it worked really well. And it was inspired by the wisdom that was transmitted in this book. Now, that is not what it's about, because what happened next, and I meditated probably for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or something like that, maybe longer, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. But at some point, a thought came up of a person I met in India. I noticed how there was a pain in my body. I could feel it in my throat, face, hip, or stomach area. How there was a pain connected to that person. And now that this book had created this powerful presence, sharp presence, and space, that's really interesting, because wisdom, I found, is very cooling and creates a lot of space. Now, I noticed that the cutting edge of growth is not in creating endless space and completely lifting up and off into whatever it may be, like super angel realms and non-duality and nirvana or whatever it may be. That when the ego is completely gone because you're so transcended into super infinite void space, that's like you are not in touch with pain anymore. And when we are too much in ego on the other side of the pole, of the polarity, that's when we resist pain. So it's basically like, okay, where's the sweet spot in between, where we are not so much in our ego, where most of the time are, where we resist pain and therefore suppress it or don't get in touch with it. But we also don't want to create so much space and equanimity and indifference, basically, that we drift past it and shoot beyond the goal and go just into space and kind of just meditate and have no more desires or no more pain with anything. But if we are exactly in the middle, where we neither resist the pain nor basically overshine it, because this is a very nice analogy I got from quote-unquote pain coach I'm working with, which is that enlightenment means that everything is enlightened. So everything has light on it, like this lamp you can see. It's like it shines light on something. But if I turned on the light super bright now, it would not be enlightened, but over-lightened, basically, or overshone. There's just too much brightness, and then you can't see, right? So enlightenment is about seeing clearly things as they are, but when there's too much light, you can't see it, or you even burn it because it's such a strong radiation. So it's no longer loving. And this is what happens when you overshoot, right? When you go too much into the space and too distant, because at that point you don't care about anything anymore, kind of. But you're also not in touch with the pain. So when you find exactly the sweet spot between resisting the pain and not caring about it at all, which you might feel like after a 10-day Vipassana retreat or 21-day Vipassana retreat, but exactly in the middle, when there's so much space that you don't fear pain and don't resist pain, but it also doesn't disappear, because this is what I had experienced on the 10-day Vipassana retreat, is that you could just tune into the power of the awareness, the light of the awareness, shine it on any sensation, and the pain would instantly disappear. But this was exactly in the middle where, when I was in this powerfully present state after reading this book, I felt these pains opening up, and I could basically see them and be very comfortable with these pains. And I was present, sharp and focused, alert, so I could stay with my mental attention on this pain. But I wouldn't contract onto it and focus onto it and want anything from it, or want to process it or do anything with the pain. I could just chill out. And I could feel myself almost creating so much space that it would ebb away. So I could see it almost disappearing. I could almost see the pain disappearing because I had so much non-resistance to it. But I just got myself back. Like, the pain would disappear, but I got myself back so it would appear again. But I didn't get myself so much back that the pain would become so real, or I would take it so seriously that I would resist it again. So then it would be there, but there would be a hardening and a resistance around it, right? And this was the whole insight of this chapter in the book, where he talked about suffering such clearly that I saw how my thinking about the future and the past was what created suffering, which took actually attention off the pain. And this is the hilarious thing. Beforehand, I thought that when I'm sitting in meditation and I'm kind of suffering in the sense of ruminating and thinking about the problem, or not ruminating, but just if I thought that that is good and that helps in the pain processing and the emotional release. But the funny thing is, it doesn't. Like, creating stories around it actually distracts from the essential pain. So suffering doesn't help at all in emotional processing and shadow work. So what this book pointed me to was to stay present, okay, and not get lost in any stories. So I shredded all the thoughts and basically dropped into the unknown present moment where only the pain was. And then I ebbed in and out of the pain, just stayed on the cutting edge and just allowed myself to experience the pain. And there was enough space to be comfortable to stay with the pain and not want to change it in any way. And that was very interesting, because this is what all the suffering is about. It's basically a shield, a protective shield around the pain. And that is our suffering, actually. All the stories, all the other stuff that's all around it, all the thoughts about it, that is where our attention goes. And our attention goes to the resistance of the pain, or the stories around the pain. But when our attention actually goes directly onto the pain, and we don't resist it, and our attention is not distracted, and we don't overshine it so it disappears, but we just stay with it. What then unfolded was what this whole video is about, and what I really wanted to capture and share. And I wanted to talk about this so you know it's real. And what I'm about to share, what happened next, is really just to inspire you, so you know that this is possible, and that people are not pulling this out of thin air, that there's really substance to it, right? Because when I first heard about yoga, I thought, okay, maybe this is just airy-fairy, blah, blah, blah. Who knows if this is real? But after you see all these elaborate systems, you know, hey, people haven't studied this for hundreds of years or created these elaborate systems for nothing or out of thin air if this was BS, right? So the more you hear people talk about it, the more you know, okay, there's probably actually something to it. So maybe it's worth applying myself to it and having the patience to stick with the process, not to create more expectations. I don't want to create expectations because those will hinder us, but I want to create inspiration to earnestly apply ourselves. So with that being said, what happened? Well, what happened is really something that reignited my fascination with this whole topic of pain processing. And it's really something magical. I have no idea how to explain. Of course, there are some ideas about physiology and whatnot, but basically what happened, the pain up here kind of disappeared, and then there was this pain in my hip, and that pain all of a sudden opened up, and I felt a rush of energy out of that pain point in my hip on the left side. It opened up, went to the back of my body here, to my spine, and then rushed up basically my entire body, but mostly on the back of my body, rushed up my back and then into my head. And while it was rushing up, it felt like many different pathways it went. Like there were so many pathways, like a tree, right? The tree of our nervous system. It felt like the energy was coursing through all the nerve endings like a tree, so many different branches. It basically rushed up my back, as I mentioned, and then up to my head. And yeah, at that point I was just laughing my ass off. It was such a expansive and cooling energy, and I felt it in my nerve endings as though it was like a little bit like needles, right? Or maybe ants or something like that. And yeah, I guess the best way to the best way it relates to might be something like Kundalini, but I have really no idea what exactly this specific energy is that is being released out of pain points. It was just very interesting to have this happen, because it is something that afterward I had some insights about what this could be and how this relates to my life, and how it's not just a one-time experience, but I do believe that this is liberating deeply held, stuck emotions in our body. I believe that it releases subconscious psychological patterns. I believe that it sustainably and deeply changes our subtle and gross behaviors, how we relate to people, especially that pain was in relation to someone I met in India last year. So this is deeply rooted in my psychology, and I believe it will affect the way I smile, the way I nod, the subconscious little non-verbal communications, as well as the vocal ones, and how relaxed I am able to stay in my daily life, how present I can be, how alive I can be, how happy I can be. Like afterward, I just fell on my back, laid on this bed, and I was just like, whoa, like suddenly I just felt a relief and yeah, a true sense of fulfillment and happiness. And there's honestly so much more I could say about this topic, but I think this video was a long enough late night talk, and I really appreciate your patience in listening through this. Let me know what insights this might have sparked in you. I'm curious. And good luck on your journeys, guys. Have a good night.